What if I told you that the most documented death in human history hides 3 psychological mysteries that would revolutionize how we understand consciousness itself? For 2,000 years, we've focused on the miracle, but we've completely ignored what was happening inside the mind of the man who claimed to defeat death. Today, we're diving into the 3 mental states that broke the laws of human psychology and changed the course of civilization forever. This isn't theology. This is pure psychological analysis of the impossible. Most people think they know what happened when Jesus died on the cross. The story seems simple: physical suffering, final words, then death. But here's what nobody talks about. There's a psychological anomaly hidden in those final moments that defies everything we know about human consciousness under extreme trauma. When humans face death, especially violent death, the mind follows predictable patterns. We see dissociation, where consciousness detaches from physical pain. We see the famous life flashing before your eyes phenomenon. We see panic, delirium, or merciful unconsciousness. But Jesus, his final recorded words reveal something that should be psychologically impossible. According to multiple historical accounts, while experiencing one of the most brutal forms of execution ever devised, Jesus maintained not just consciousness, but what psychologists call metacognitive awareness, the ability to think about thinking. He was simultaneously experiencing unimaginable physical trauma while maintaining the mental clarity to speak coherently, show concern for others, and even engage in theological discourse. This isn't just unusual, it's unprecedented in the entire medical literature of trauma psychology. Pain researchers have documented thousands of cases of extreme suffering, and this level of mental clarity under such circumstances has never been replicated. Even trained Navy SEALs conditioned for torture resistance lose cognitive function under far less stress. But here's where it gets truly mysterious. Jesus wasn't just maintaining consciousness, he was demonstrating what modern neuroscience calls executive function at peak levels. He was making complex decisions, showing emotional regulation, and maintaining social awareness. This suggests his brain was operating in a completely different mode than what trauma psychology tells us should be possible. Here's the psychological revelation that changes everything. Jesus was experiencing what we now understand as a transcendent cognitive state, a mental condition that modern science is only beginning to recognize. This isn't mystical speculation. It's based on cutting-edge research in consciousness studies and extreme state psychology. Dr. Stanislav Grof's research on consciousness during trauma identified rare cases where individuals enter what he called transpersonal states, moments where normal ego boundaries dissolve. But instead of losing awareness, consciousness actually expands. But Jesus took this to an unprecedented level. Historical analysis of his final words reveals a pattern that mirrors what neuroscientists call heightened metacognition. When he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do," he wasn't just showing forgiveness. He was demonstrating simultaneous awareness of his own pain, his executioner's mental states, divine perspective, and future consequences. This requires multiple brain networks firing in perfect coordination while the body is shutting down. But here's the part that breaks psychology. Trauma research shows that extreme physical pain should have triggered massive stress hormone releases. Cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. That would have made complex cognitive processing impossible. Yet Jesus maintained what researchers call cognitive coherence throughout the entire ordeal. Even more fascinating, his concern for his mother and the beloved disciple shows maintained attachment behavior under conditions that should have triggered complete psychological withdrawal. This suggests his brain was somehow operating outside normal stress response mechanisms. Modern pain research has documented something called stress-induced analgesia, where extreme trauma can shut down pain perception. But Jesus seemed to experience something different, pain acknowledgement without cognitive impairment. He felt everything but remained psychologically intact. This combination, full pain awareness plus maintained executive function plus expanded social cognition, has never been documented in any other case in psychological literature. It suggests a form of consciousness that transcends known neurological limitations. Think of the human mind under extreme trauma like a computer with too many programs running. Eventually, the system crashes to protect the hard drive. The brain does the same thing. It shuts down non-essential functions to preserve core survival processes. But imagine a computer that, instead of crashing under maximum load, somehow upgrades its operating system in real time. That's what we're seeing with Jesus. His mind wasn't just surviving the trauma, it was operating at superhuman levels. Here's the perfect analogy. Picture a master pianist performing the most complex concerto ever written while the concert hall is burning down around him. Not only does he continue playing perfectly, but he's also conducting the orchestra, comforting audience members, and composing new music simultaneously. This is psychologically impossible unless the pianist has access to a completely different level of mental processing. This is exactly what the historical record shows us about Jesus' mental state during crucifixion. While his body was experiencing maximum trauma, his mind was operating like that impossible pianist, maintaining multiple complex cognitive functions that should have been shut down by pain and stress. What makes this even more incredible is that crucifixion was specifically designed to break the human spirit. Roman executioners were experts at psychological torture. They knew exactly how to push the human mind past its breaking point. Yet their most brutal method seemed to have the opposite effect on Jesus. The implications are staggering. If consciousness can transcend physical limitations to this degree, it suggests that the mind-brain relationship is far more complex than we've ever imagined. Jesus wasn't just surviving impossible circumstances, he was demonstrating a form of consciousness that modern science is only now beginning to understand might be theoretically possible. If this is exploding your head, hit that like button so more people can discover these hidden truths. But wait, because the second case is even more shocking. If Jesus' consciousness during death was unprecedented, what happened during the 3 days in the tomb opens up an even more mind-bending psychological mystery. We're entering territory that challenges our fundamental understanding of what consciousness is and whether it can exist independently of brain function. Here's what nobody talks about: every major religious tradition and now quantum consciousness. Researchers describe states of awareness that transcend physical death. But Jesus claimed something unique: that his consciousness remained intact and active during clinical death. This isn't just resurrection mythology. It's a testable claim about the nature of consciousness itself. Modern neuroscience tells us that brain death means consciousness death. Period. When neural activity stops, awareness stops. Yet Jesus described experiences and activities during his death that suggest not just continued consciousness, but expanded consciousness. He spoke of descending to the realm of the dead, of preaching to spirits, of cosmic-level awareness. But here's where psychology gets truly puzzled. If consciousness somehow continued during clinical death, it would have to be operating on completely different principles than everything we understand about neural function. This suggests either consciousness is far more than brain activity, or Jesus accessed a level of mental function that transcends known biological limitations. Research in near-death experiences has documented cases where clinically dead patients report enhanced awareness, expanded perception, and access to information they couldn't have known. But Jesus claimed something far beyond this: active engagement and purposeful activity during death. This poses an unprecedented question for consciousness research. If awareness can not only survive physical death, but remain goal-directed and socially engaged, what does this tell us about the fundamental nature of mind? Jesus wasn't just experiencing death. He was reportedly working, teaching, and transforming spiritual realities during clinical death. The psychological implications are staggering. If consciousness can maintain identity, memory, purpose, and social function without brain support, then everything we think we know about the mind-brain relationship needs to be reconsidered. Here's the revelation that's revolutionizing consciousness research. Jesus demonstrated what leading scientists now call non-local consciousness, awareness that operates independently of brain function. This isn't mystical speculation anymore. It's the cutting edge of quantum consciousness studies. Dr. Stuart Hameroff at the University of Arizona and Dr. Roger Penrose have proposed that consciousness might operate at the quantum level, meaning it could theoretically exist independently of classical brain function. Jesus' reported experiences during death align perfectly with their theoretical framework. But here's what makes Jesus' case unique. He didn't just claim consciousness survival. He described enhanced cognitive abilities during death. He spoke of accessing cosmic-level information, understanding spiritual dimensions, and engaging in complex teaching activities. This suggests consciousness wasn't just surviving, it was operating at expanded capacity. Modern research into psychedelic states and mystical experiences has documented similar expanded awareness phenomena, but these occur in living brains under extreme chemical influence. Jesus claimed this level of consciousness expansion while clinically dead for 3 days. The psychological profile becomes even more intriguing when we analyze what he reportedly accomplished during death. According to his own accounts, he was simultaneously experiencing multiple reality dimensions, engaging with non-physical entities, and maintaining perfect memory of his earthly mission and relationships. This requires what psychologists call integrated consciousness, unified awareness across multiple experiential domains. But here's the part that breaks conventional psychology. He maintained what researchers call narrative identity throughout death. He remained Jesus with all his memories, personality, and mission intact. Most consciousness research suggests that without brain support, identity should dissolve completely. Even more fascinating, when he returned to physical life, he demonstrated perfect psychological continuity. There was no memory loss, no personality changes, no cognitive impairment that we'd expect from someone who had experienced clinical death. His disciples noted that he was unmistakably the same person, yet somehow enhanced. This suggests either an entirely new model of consciousness-brain interaction, or that Jesus had access to mental capabilities that transcend known neurological limitations. Either way, it revolutionizes our understanding of what human consciousness might actually be capable of. Imagine your smartphone's data is stored entirely in the device's memory. When the phone breaks completely, the data dies with it. This is how most scientists think consciousness works. When the brain dies, awareness dies. But what if your phone was actually connected to a cloud system so advanced that not only did your data survive when the hardware died, but it could actually run better in the cloud than it ever did on the physical device? That's what Jesus claimed happened to his consciousness during death. Here's an even more powerful analogy. Think of consciousness like a video game character. Most characters exist only while the game console is running. Turn off the power, and they cease to exist. But imagine a character that could not only survive when the console was turned off, but could actually access higher levels of the game that were impossible while limited by the console's processing power. This is exactly what Jesus described: consciousness that not only survived physical death, but operated at enhanced levels impossible during physical life. He wasn't just backed up somewhere, he was running on a superior operating system. What makes this psychologically revolutionary is that it suggests consciousness might be like Wi-Fi, something that uses the brain as a receiver, but isn't actually produced by the brain. When Jesus died, he didn't lose consciousness, he just switched to a more powerful connection. The implications for understanding human potential are staggering. If consciousness can operate independently of brain limitations, then death might not be an ending, but a transition to expanded awareness. Jesus wasn't just surviving death, he was demonstrating that consciousness might be far more powerful than we've ever imagined. This completely changes how we think about mental limitations, human potential, and the nature of awareness itself. If Jesus could maintain and enhance consciousness without physical support, what other mental capabilities might we be capable of? And subscribe now, because the third case that comes next will completely change your perspective on human nature. The third and most psychologically explosive mystery is what happened the moment Jesus returned to physical life. This isn't just about the miracle of resurrection, it's about a consciousness transition that should be impossible according to everything we know about human psychology. Here's what makes this unprecedented. Jesus didn't just come back to life. He came back transformed. The psychological profile of post-resurrection Jesus reveals cognitive abilities and awareness levels that transcend normal human limitations. This suggests he achieved what consciousness researchers call evolved consciousness, a permanent upgrade in mental functioning. Most people who experience clinical death and return near-death experiences show significant psychological changes. They often have difficulty readjusting to physical reality, struggle with memory integration, and report feeling disconnected from their previous identity. But Jesus demonstrated perfect psychological integration plus enhanced capabilities. The historical record shows something that defies everything we know about consciousness and identity. Post-resurrection, Jesus maintained complete continuity with his pre-death personality while simultaneously displaying new cognitive abilities. He could appear and disappear at will, suggesting consciousness-matter interaction beyond known physics. He demonstrated enhanced telepathic awareness, knowing disciples' thoughts and emotional states instantly. But here's the most psychologically significant aspect. He showed what researchers call multidimensional consciousness, simultaneous awareness of physical and non-physical realities. He could engage normally in physical activities like eating and conversation, while also demonstrating abilities that suggest consciousness operating beyond space-time limitations. This combination, perfect psychological continuity plus evolved capabilities plus multidimensional awareness, has never been documented in any other case. It suggests that consciousness can not only survive death, but use that experience to achieve permanent expansion beyond previous biological limitations. The implications challenge our fundamental understanding of human potential. If consciousness can evolve through death and resurrection, it suggests that our current mental limitations might not be permanent features of human nature, but temporary constraints that can potentially be transcended. Here's the revelation that's revolutionizing our understanding of consciousness evolution. Jesus achieved what leading consciousness researchers call post-biological awareness, consciousness that has evolved beyond the limitations of brain-dependent functioning. This represents the ultimate frontier of human psychological development. Dr. Ken Wilber's research on consciousness evolution describes stages of mental development that most humans never reach. But Jesus demonstrated what appears to be a completely new stage, consciousness that has integrated physical death as an evolutionary catalyst rather than an ending. The psychological profile is unprecedented. Jesus maintained his core identity and all his memories while gaining abilities that suggest consciousness had evolved beyond normal space-time constraints. He could appear in locked rooms, suggesting his consciousness could manipulate physical reality directly. He demonstrated instant access to disciples' mental states, indicating expanded telepathic awareness. But here's what makes this truly revolutionary. He showed perfect emotional integration. Most people who experience extreme trauma develop PTSD or other psychological after-effects. Jesus showed no signs of trauma from crucifixion, death, or resurrection. Instead, he demonstrated enhanced emotional wisdom and deeper compassion. Even more significant, his teaching capabilities evolved. Post-resurrection, Jesus could convey complex spiritual concepts with unprecedented clarity. His disciples noted that he could communicate understanding directly without needing words. This suggests consciousness had evolved beyond the limitations of language-based communication. Modern quantum consciousness research suggests that awareness might operate at multiple dimensional levels simultaneously. Jesus appeared to have achieved conscious mastery of this multidimensional functioning. He could engage with physical reality while maintaining awareness of spiritual dimensions that most humans can't even perceive. The most psychologically significant aspect, he demonstrated what researchers call transpersonal identity, personal consciousness that had expanded to include cosmic awareness while maintaining individual identity. This solves one of psychology's greatest puzzles: how to evolve beyond ego limitations without losing personal identity. This suggests that death and resurrection weren't just miraculous events. They were consciousness evolution processes that revealed the ultimate potential of human awareness. Jesus didn't just survive death. He used it as a catalyst for achieving the highest known level of consciousness development. Imagine a caterpillar that somehow remained fully conscious during its transformation into a butterfly. Not only would it remember being a caterpillar, but it would understand exactly how the metamorphosis process worked and could teach other caterpillars how to evolve consciously rather than instinctively. This is exactly what Jesus achieved through death and resurrection. He didn't just transform, he remained conscious throughout the entire process and could teach others how consciousness evolution actually works. Here's the ultimate analogy. Picture a video game where most players can only access level 1, and when they die, the game ends. But imagine a player who discovered that dying in the game was actually the secret to unlocking all the hidden levels. Not only does he not lose the game when he dies, but death becomes the key to accessing powers and abilities that were impossible at level 1. Jesus discovered that death wasn't the end of consciousness. It was the upgrade mechanism. He used death like a software update that expanded his operating system beyond physical limitations. What makes this so psychologically revolutionary is that it suggests human consciousness has built-in upgrade potential that most of us never discover. We think death is a limitation, but Jesus demonstrated it might actually be the key to transcending all limitations. The implications are staggering. If consciousness can evolve through death and resurrection, then our current mental abilities might just be the basic version of what human awareness is actually capable of achieving. Jesus wasn't just showing us life after death. He was showing us consciousness beyond current human limitations. This completely revolutionizes how we think about human potential, mental development, and the ultimate purpose of consciousness itself. If Jesus could achieve evolved awareness through conscious death and resurrection, it suggests that consciousness evolution might be the actual goal of human existence. These three psychological mysteries reveal that Jesus didn't just claim to defeat death. He demonstrated consciousness capabilities that transcend everything we thought we knew about human mental limitations. From maintaining superhuman cognitive function during extreme trauma, to operating enhanced awareness during clinical death, to achieving evolved consciousness through resurrection, Jesus showed us that human awareness might be capable of far more than we've ever imagined. If these 3 cases exploded your mind, smash that like button and subscribe to not miss our next mysteries. And tell us in the comments, which of these revelations surprised you most? Hit the bell so the algorithm doesn't lie to you. And if you know someone who needs to see this, share it, because these truths need to be known. Until next time, keep questioning everything. This analysis is speculative and based on historical and biblical accounts, not clinical diagnosis. The content explores psychological interpretations for educational purposes. This analysis is speculative and based on historical accounts and psychological principles, not clinical diagnosis.